Hallelujah. Again today we are dealing with the founding fathers. This is the second part, and we're going to be talking about Ham. Again, there's a lot of names in this passage that we're going to be dealing with, and I want to try to make the connection, as I said. We're not going to try to make a connection with every name, but there are some key names that I know you'll recognize, and we will look at some of those. I want to read first Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, and Phut and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba and Havilah, and Sapta, and Ramah, and Saptika. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Jehovah. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Chalni, and in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Ashur, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Kala. And Rezin, between Nineveh and Kala, the same is a great city. And Mizraim begot Ludin, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Kaslahim, out of whom came Philistine, and Captorine. And Canaan begot Sidon, and his firstborn, and Heth. And the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sidite, and the Avidite, and the Zamorite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as thou comest to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah, and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Now we're here in Genesis chapter 10. We've covered, as you've followed along with us last week. We dealt with the descendants of Japheth. And now we are dealing with the descendants of Ham. We made or attempted to make a connection between some of Japheth's descendants, even into modern time. And we'll do the same here, although I must say that there is a lot more going on with Ham's descendants throughout Scripture, as we're going to see. And so, the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan. And what I've realized is that if we really just look up the name of these individuals here, we will find out a lot about them, but in looking up the names, because I looked in several resources, and there are some differences in the resources as far as their definition. And so it's important to find agreement if you can. Now, Ham, for instance, it says it means hot. He was the second son of Noah. And most of the tools out there, the dictionaries and the concordances, agree that Ham was the second son. But there are others out there who seems to think that Ham could have been the first or could have been the last son, that Japheth was the oldest. And so they kind of twist things around. And as I searched back to some of the origins of these, much of the confusions that people engage in, interestingly enough, has a tendency to all flow back into Judaism and the different philosophies when it comes down to what house that a person would study under. And so it's interesting when you look at when you trace the origin of information back to where it leads you to, and that can sometimes give you some of the reasons why there are differences. And it's really about the organizing, how people read Hebrew, how people look at the four levels of Torah, the meanings, the symbolisms, and all of these kinds of things. And you have to be careful when you start going down into those places, because you can get pulled in and caught up, and next thing you know, you've been able to identify with a specific Jewish philosophy, a particular house, depending on what you agree with. Cush, the word Cush means black. And the interesting thing is the use, there was a Benjamite mentioned who was named Cush, and then the son of Ham and grandson of Noah. And these are some of the definitions. Progenitor of the southernmost people located in Africa, the people descended from Cush. Ethiopian. And the word Ethiopia is 19 times translated, or Cush is translated Ethiopia or Ethiopia to Cush, Cush 8 times, and Ethiopians 3. And so the majority of the use of the word Cush takes us to Ethiopia or the Ethiopian. Then Mizraim. Mizraim meaning land of the Copts or Egypt. In some places, it's the two Egypts, Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt, a country at the northeastern section of Africa, adjacent to Palestine, and through which the Nile flows. Adjective or Egyptians, double straits, and that's where that two Egypts come from, Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, the inhabitants or natives of Egypt. And the way it's used, Egypt 560 times. And what's interesting is that the Egyptian culture is one of the oldest thriving cultures in the Bible. We know that Egypt existed before Israel. It's clear. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or a Bible scholar. All you got to do is just have the capacity to read, and you'll realize that before there was an Israel, which was Canaan, it was Egypt. I'm sorry. Before there was an Israel, there was an Egypt. And so it's used 586 times as Egypt, Egyptian 90 times, Mizraim 4 times, and then, of course, Egyptians. And then there's this Phut. Phut meaning a bow, a nation and people of northern Africa, probably Libyans. And so when you look at it, and then, of course, there's Canaan. Canaan meaning lowland, the fourth son of Ham and the progenitor of the Phoenicians, and of the various nations who peopled the seacoast of Palestine. And so Palestine, Philistine, Phoenician has some connection. There's a connection, and these words are sometimes used interchangeably without individuals realizing it until you start looking up the words. The land west of the Jordan, peopled by the descendants of Canaan and subsequently conquered by the Israelites under Joshua. And the word is used 89 times in the Old Testament as Canaan, merchant 3, traffic and traffickers. So, there are much movement among the Canaanite people and associations with merchants and trafficking. So the Hamitic people, as I stated, are one of the oldest in civilization. The descendants of the sons of Ham, their descendants are all mentioned in the New Testament, and that's interesting as you'll see the connection here. Hamitic people, modern day. So Cush, Ethiopia. And Ethiopia is mentioned in Genesis, it's mentioned in Acts. Mizraim, Egypt. We know that Egypt, Mizraim is mentioned in the Old Testament. It's a place where uh, Yeshua's parents went to hide or went to get away from Herod when he had threatened to kill all the Hebrew children the boys under 2 years old. And so Egypt, we saw, was a place for refuge, not only for Yeshua's parents, but also for Abraham. Abraham, it was a place for him. It's got its history with Joseph. If you remember, Joseph lived there. He became viceroy. Moses grew up in Egypt. And so there's a lot of history with Egypt, a descendant of Ham. And then there's Phut, which is modern-day Libya, and Cyrene, which is a city in Libya, the land of Phut, is represented in Acts chapter 2, where there were disciples who came up, or Jews who came up, or Israelites who came up from Cyrene up to Jerusalem for Pentecost. And then, of course, there's Canaan. Now, interestingly enough, Israel was given the land of Canaan, but Israel didn't inhabit all of the land of Canaan, because Canaan's descendants, part of which was Sidon, which was one of his sons, which is modern-day Lebanon today. In the time of Yeshua, it was Sidon. And we know that there's some activity that took place, which we'll look at in a moment. The descendants of Ham migrated through modern Africa, the Middle and Far East or Asia. And here's where maps come into play, because it's very difficult sometimes to envision where these places are until you look at them on a map and you begin to see, wow, Ham was not just what we know today as Africa. Ham was all up, and you'll see that there's a lot, wherever you see the green on the map, you will find that these are the descendants of Ham. Wherever you see green, and I specifically have some arrows pointing to certain areas of green, but not all of the areas of green, because going all the way up into the land, what is considered to be the land of Japheth, also into the land of Ham, especially Shem, especially if you go toward the horn of what we know, the Horn of Africa, or what some would consider parts of Saudi Arabia today. You'll see in Oman and some of these other places, you'll see where it was the land that Ham's descendants migrated to. And so the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah. Now, interestingly enough, Havilah is the first name that is mentioned in Genesis. I'll show you in a moment. And Sabta, and Rama, and Sabteka, and the sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. And so Sheba, the land of Sheba, is where the queen of Sheba came, who came to interact with Solomon. And there's a myth, which some believe is more than a myth, is truth, that the Jamaicans are the descendants, or many of those who were Haile Selassie, which was supposedly a descendant directly from King Solomon and the relationship he had with Sheba, which some also believe that the Song of Solomon is all about. Yeah. The land of Havilah is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 2. And this is what it says. The name of the first, speaking of Eden and its location, the name of the first river, headwater, that is, which compass the whole land of Havilah. And so the land of Havilah is the land of a descendant of Ham from Cush. And so it's interesting that when Moses is writing, Moses is on this, he's on this side, if you would, of Genesis. Because Moses is writing concerning Genesis, but he was born long after Joseph. You see. And so all of this history, so when Moses is writing, Moses is writing from a place of history, not as one who was there. So he's making the connection that this Eden was where, trying to identify Eden was the land of Havilah, a descendant of Ham, because what it does, see, it simply named Pison, the river, that is it which encompasses the whole land. And the land was named by the people who inhabit it, the founder of it. Is this making sense? And so when Moses is writing, Moses is looking back through history and saying, if you want to identify where this area is, where the river Pison is, it was somewhere near the whole land. It encompassed the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And then it begins to identify that this land not only had gold, but the gold was good. And then there was bdellium and the onyx stone. You see. And so that's a location. Now, when we look at it on a map, you can see that this land of Havilah is over near the Persian Gulf. It's on the other side of the land of Shem, but it is also near the land of Shem. And where people have tried to identify the Garden of Eden, right now they're trying to put it in areas of Babylon and and in Iraq and all of that. But before it was Iraq, before it was Babylon, before it was any Mesopotamia, it was the land of Ham. Because you're going to see that all of this area is where the sons of Ham or descendants of Ham migrated to. And it's quite interesting. Did you need to see that a little longer? Because I can, if you like, if you write me, if you all want this, I can send you the PowerPoint. All you got to do is just write me on the contact us. I like the PowerPoint and the maps, and I'll send you that stuff. Well, Eden doesn't show up on this map, but if you were to try to look at to identify, if you were to Google say map of Eden, you'll find that there is people who put it in different areas, but geographically it encompasses somewhere near what is known today as the Persian Gulf area. But they cannot locate it, but people are guesstimating. So this is where you will find land and map and names, because the headwaters that comes out, it seems to all flow into the Persian Gulf, or what we call today the Persian Gulf. So all of those rivers seem to flow into the Persian Gulf. So it puts Eden somewhere in that location. And that's where Havilah is, the land of Havilah. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Jehovah. And the beginning of his kingdom. Now, here's where these names are important, especially trying to identify or locate them on a map. If a person don't have a map, they are clueless as to where things may be. Because in your mind, you can put things anywhere you want to. But when you have a map, you just can't put Charlotte anywhere on the map you want it to be. Charlotte, North Carolina has a specific geographical area. It has latitude and longitude, and it's specific. Now, there are some other Charlottes, but it's not Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's the same with these names that are here. And so you got Babel, Erech, Ahad, Kalni, and this was in the land of Shinar. So when you look at the land of Shinar, you'll see that Ham over here in what we see today as parts of Africa, upper Africa, North Africa. But then you'll notice that these lines, the first line at the very top, you'll see Japheth, and right underneath there, you'll see the city of Nineveh. And then Shinar is the last line. You'll see in green is Shinar. And then the third line, or the middle line, is Babylon. And all of this is over toward what we would call, what has been identified as the potential location of where Eden may have been. And so you'll see Erech, Shinar, Akkad, Babylon, Kala, Nineveh. These are all the descendants and where they settled that came from Ham and his son. And again, this is coming from Cush. But that's not all the land of Cush. Out of that land went forth Asher and built Nineveh and the city Rehoboth and Kala, and Rezin. Between Nineveh and Kala, the same is a great city. And again, I point the arrows up to Nineveh and to Kala. And you'll see that that is right on the border of Japheth. But it's on the also border of Shem. And so the sons of Ham were north of Shem, south of Shem, east of Shem, west of Shem, surrounding Shem. And there was a lot of interaction between Ham and Shem's descendants. And then there's Mizraim, begat Ludim and Anamim and Labim and Naphtuhim and Pathrusim and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistine and Caphtorim. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn. And so now we get into Canaan, and it begs to Noah, we know, placed a curse on Canaan. And from a teaching point of view, it would be, it has been communicated that Noah cursed Canaan, and therefore all of Canaan's descendants were cursed. And then that becomes somewhat problematic as it relates to Jehovah. Now, Jehovah honored Noah, but Jehovah also said that the sons of the fathers, the sons of the fathers would not be responsible for the father's sins. That every man has to deal with his own sin. That he even forbade his people to no longer use the statement that because the fathers ate sour grapes, the children's teeth were cut on edge. And so there is some challenging in reconciling some of the things that have been taught and said when you compare and relate it to what Father said. And as we go through, you're going to see where some of these challenges come in. Now, Canaan begat Sidon, as we see. Sidon was his firstborn. And here's, if we fast forward from the sons of Noah and their land, we pass through Israel, the children of Israel, the land of Israel, and we move all the way through the prophets to Yeshua. So we've got several thousand years of time that in distance that we're covering. And the reason I want to say this is because few people realize that the borderland of Israel during the time of Yeshua, that Yeshua went outside of Israel. And here's one of those examples. And where did he go? He went into Sidon. If you remember in Matthew, there was a Canaanite woman who came to Yeshua, who had a daughter. And that story is found in Matthew 15. Then Yeshua went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon was outside of Israel. Yeshua went outside of Israel. And behold, a woman of Canaan. And so what do we find? We find that the Canaanites still inhabited certain areas and parts surrounding the land and even in the land. Because what people call Palestine or the Palestinians, some people say they were a created people, created by the United Nations or whatever. They are descendants of some historians connect them to the Philistines and the Phoenicians. And the Philistines and the Phoenicians were they were the land that they inhabited were the land of Ham and his descendants. And so we see here that Canaan's firstborn was named Sidon, and the land of Sidon is where Yeshua took respite to get away from some people in Israel because of certain things that they were attempting. And so he says, he went from there, he departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Now, Sidon today is Lebanon. It's Lebanon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast. Who? A woman of Canaan. Here it is, a descendant of Canaan is coming in connection with Yeshua. And cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord. She referred to him, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, "Send her away, for she cries after us." Well, you in her land. But here's the thing: the Yeshua's fame had spread to where this Canaanite woman knew him and referred to him as the son of David and besought him. But he answered and said, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Now that's a mouthful right there. If he sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Does that exclude the lost Judah? It doesn't exclude Judah, but it includes Judah. Why? Because at this particular point, Yeshua is not looking at the Israelites, the people of Jehovah, as being two houses. It's one. It's always been one from Father's perspective. People put titles on what Father has done, give it some kind of meaning, and it creates these ideas and ideologies in the people's heads. Now, the Bible do refer to the house of Israel and the house of Judah, but it was a splitting that took place, and there was some things that created rivalry between the two. Much of the problems between men are man-made. Much of the problems between men are man-made. So there was some things that Father did that caused there to be a split. But when Father said, it's like, listen, I'm bringing y'all together. My goal is reconciling. Father's goal is always reconciling. Reconciling people and reconciling his people. So Yeshua, the Redeemer, is a reconciler. And those who follow him, this is why he says, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. We are to try to live at peace with one another. But instead, people have a tendency to find those things that create division where they can effectively separate, which is contrary to what Yeshua wants his people to do. Now, granted, when it comes down to the people of the world and the people of the kingdom, there's going to be a separation. That's inevitable. Yeshua didn't come to bring peace to reconcile the kingdom in the world. He came to bring peace, or he came to bring a sword to separate the world and his people, but not to remove his people from the world. See, you and I cannot exile ourselves from the world we have been sent to. And there are people who have a tendency to pick up a message or pick up a position that they've, I'm going to step out there. I'm amazed at how many are pushing for the gospel of the kingdom is to reconcile people to Jehovah. That's simple. It's to take the gospel of the kingdom, the good news of the kingdom. If people are discipled, if we focus on discipleship like Father told us to, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be teaching people the commandments. We're going to be giving people the instructions on how they're to live their lives and to conduct their lives. If you can get people to live their lives and conduct their lives in accordance to what Father has called us to do, then people will abandon a lot of the abominations that are carried out in the world. But there are people who have a tendency to focus on the abomination and make that their cry. And one of the abominations that operates here in the United States is it's amazing how the politicians have made abortion a big issue for people to focus on. And people who focus on that don't seem to be focusing on discipleship. They don't seem to be focusing on kingdom. They're interested in trying to save the unborn. And understand, I get that, but is that what Yeshua sent us to try to do? It's interesting to try to save the unborn without trying to get the mom or the dad discipled. You see. And it's interesting, too, you look at some of the statistics that are out there that of the 198 nations in the United Nations, there's about 6 nations in the United Nations that have actually made abortion legal or illegal. There's about 58 nations that permit and made abortion legal. There's many nations that haven't. And what I've also found is the numbers, that when it comes down to America, America ranks somewhere about 7th in all of the developed countries, as I think about 19% from an abortion rate. Russia being the highest at about 34%. But America abortion rate is higher than the abortion rate in China. And I'm looking at all of this focus, and where is the focus on discipleship? You see, society and church and organizations have a tendency to give the people of Jehovah an assignment and a commission, and they take that banner and they run with that commission while ignoring the commission the Messiah gave us. You see, if we focus on the commission that we have been commissioned by our Savior, how many of you know that every person who comes into the knowledge of truth is not going to see abortion as an option? There's a whole lot of other things they're not going to see as an option. And so we can't let the world and politicians and organizations give us a mission, especially if that mission is contrary or secondary to the commission we've already been given. Now, when I go down there, that road, people think that I'm not for abortion. I'm not. I believe it's wrong. I believe it's an abomination. And I can applaud, I won't, that's a whole nother animal there. But if people are really going to stand on what they believe, stand on what you believe. Don't be tiptoeing around the issue. If you believe abortion is murder, then make it a punishable crime. But I'm going to tell you, it's deeper than that for people. But Yeshua is calling us to focus on the mission that he gave us to go to take this gospel of the kingdom. And here his disciples are saying, send her away, send her away. But he says, listen, I didn't come for y'all yet. I'm not sent yet, is what he's saying, because he's going to send his disciples. His first priority, the first priority of Yeshua was for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's the whole house of Israel. That's all the tribes. He didn't come to say, I'm sent to the lost Jews. But the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which included the descendants of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, which includes all of the tribes of Israel. Why? Because Israel was supposed to be the light. Instead, it's dark. And then when he came, he said, this is why he came. Then she came and worshiped him. She worshiped him, saying, Lord, help me. And look at how he responded. But he answered and said it. Now, I believe he was trying to teach his disciples a lesson and trying to teach us a lesson. Because here's what happened. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. Now, those are fighting words. I mean, how you going to call me a dog? But as I've said before, the woman was focused. See, when you're focused, you don't, this is one of those situations where sticks and stones will break your bones, but words, listen, you can call me what you want. But I've come on a mission. And insulting me is not going to deter me from the mission in which I'm beseeching you. So she had a comeback. And she said, truth, Lord, I know. Yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. See, now people treat their dogs better than they treat humans. The dogs ain't eating from the crumbs. The dog got a plate at the table. Trying to teach the dog how to use a knife and fork. It's like, wow. Got a little napkin on the dog. Place setting on the dog for the dog. Oh, that's family. Really? That's perverted. Then Yeshua answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Great is thy faith. What made her faith great is that she did not allow insults to turn her away from her desired cause. She had a cause and a, how would I put it? She was on a mission. She had an outcome in mind. Her desired outcome is like, I'm coming. Listen, I know you're a healer. I done heard about you. And because I know you're a healer, I know you can heal my daughter. And so he said to this woman, your faith is great. Your faith is great. I insulted you. You ignored my insult. I tried to turn you away, but you responded with respect and dignity. Says, yes, Lord, I'm not saying you're a lie. How dare you call me a dog? Listen, you done healed all those other people. That ain't fair. She didn't go down that road. She said, yeah, I realize that I'm not an Israelite. I realize that I'm not part of the house of Israel. But I have needs just like they do. And calling me a dog, listen, if I have to bow, if I have to bark, now she's not saying all of that, but the point is that, yeah, that's true, but even the dogs eat the crumbs from their master's table. And what is she calling? She's calling herself a slave and calling him a master, which could be, to some degree, a fulfillment, well, not really, of Noah when he said that Canaan shall be a servant, but Yeshua was not from Japheth, he was from Shem. And so after her daughter, he says, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt, and her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Going back to Genesis chapter 10, and the Jebusites and the Amorites and the Girgasites and the Hivite and the Archite and the Sinite and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. Now, this particular map shows us that much of the land of Canaan was inhabited by the Arvadites, the Zemarites, the Archites, the Sinites, the Sidonians, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and the Girgasites. And there are some others that are not part of the land of Canaan, but if this verse here in verse 10 says, and afterwards were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. So they were all over. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha. And this is the land. Now, Sidon is at the very north of Israel, Lebanon. And then Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim are at the south of Israel, below the Dead Sea. So the Jordan follows down from north to south, and it ends into the Dead Sea. And this is where you'll see the setting here, this little map where the Jordan River in the gray at the top of the map flowing down. The Dead Sea is not mentioned, but on the other side and partway through there is Sodom. I need my map. Okay. Yeah, these images which shows us, there we go, that Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, that's south of the Dead Sea, near the Egyptian border, or going toward Egypt, as you can see. And here, I think, yeah, that's a closer look. So if we were to look at some of the other maps, as I've already, and we can remove the PowerPoint there for a moment. If I'm going to see if I can find, yeah, nope, can't. These are bigger maps. You can see Canaan, but you can't see the Jordan, and you can't see the Dead Sea. And so through this, Canaan and his descendants, they spread abroad. These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, languages, in their countries, and in their nations. And this is the end of the descendants of Ham. And next week, we're going to look at Shem, which is going to get real interesting because I want to point some things out again. As we're going through Genesis, as we're doing these verse by verse studies, what we're finding is things that shed light on some things that we've been taught, which should create in our minds some questions as to why people believe certain things and arguments that are made, whereas you become armed with what is written. And now that you are armed with what is written, you're not being tossed to and fro with every doctrine or every wind of doctrine that people are throwing at you. So we'll bring this portion to a close. I hope this was helpful in giving you some ancient and modern perspectives on these descendants and their location. Amen. Shalom, saints. Tithing and giving first fruit offerings are critical parts of the believer's faith and has its foundation back in Genesis 4:4, when Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Abel was commended by Jehovah in Hebrews 11:4, where it states that by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Solomon said in Proverbs 3:9-10, Honor Jehovah with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst out with new wine. The prophet Malachi wrote in chapter 3, verse 11 and 12, to bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, says Jehovah of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there should not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, says Jehovah of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a delightsome land, saith Jehovah of hosts. When we tithe and give offerings consistently in obedience to Jehovah's commandments, we can count on him to keep his promises to us and consistently meet all of our needs. It is our Father's desire to bless you. However, it begins with you and your act of obedience to tithe and give offerings. Do it today. Shalom.
For more information, visit www.arthurbaileyministries.com or call 888-899-1479. House of Israel International Services is made possible through financial contributions from brothers and sisters like you. Thank you.